Hey everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Toma aka Toma, and this year I've decided to try something new, which involves making standalone videos about things I like. So for our inaugural video, I'm going to be covering the May 30th Summer Game Fest 2024 PlayStation State of Play event, which is a heck of a mouthful. But basically I'm just going to run through everything we saw in the event and go through the notes I made on each trailer, and hopefully this is somehow useful, interesting, or at the very least entertaining to you guys. And if it goes well and the time allows, I might just do some more coverage of upcoming events. With that being said, I think it's about high time we get into it. First up is Concord from Firewalk Games, in which they said they would show gameplay and then immediately showed like a 5-minute pre-rendered trailer. They did show gameplay later that was just funny to me at the time. My initial thoughts were that it looked like they wanted to make Guardians of the Galaxy, but if it were like Fantastic Four. Oh, I may have been a little bit off the mark there, but hear me out. It's a very pretty trailer, and I think to a certain audience it could be a lot of fun, but I thought it was sort of tropey and annoying. I think it was this yellow guy's fault. Just this constant string of dialogue, the casual mannerisms, how do I put it? Whatever the trope is that is blasé motor-mouth man-child with no-nonsense female backup character who really should be in charge. I guess in my mind it's like they took Star-Lord and slammed him together with Deadpool, and I'm just not sold on this style of character. I find him above all else extremely irritating. That aside though, I think the designs are pretty cool. We saw this awesome sniper lady, a big fun chunky robot, and a giant crystal Fantastic Four Ben-looking man. It was nicely put together and it showed us what we should come to expect from this new universe. They then showed some gameplay. It's a 5x5 hero shooter. Maps are pretty interesting with this neat set pieces like this one with the giant down robot that looks like you can get all up inside, so that's neat. I feel like now that we've moved on from every game being a battle royale game, the race is on for the new big hero shooter, and with Valve's new game on the horizon too, it's entering a similarly competitive space, but this looks to be going for a more classic arena shooter than something more MOBA-like. So it's more like entering the Overwatch space. Add to that idea that they are planning on showing new in-game cinematics every week that expand the character arcs, and they could be onto something cool with this universe. I think having a new cutscene every week is a really interesting way to try to get people who are interested in the story and the characters to come back and keep playing, or at the very least it's a great way to get people to keep engaging with your brand by watching the cutscenes online, which is honestly probably what I would be doing. As a first trailer, it didn't give me too much to go on for the characters, but they did show the character select screen, and some of the designs they showed looked pretty awesome, so it would be cool to see more character-focused mini-movies in the future a la Overwatch, although I expect they'll be doing this within the game as previously stated. Concord is set to have a pre-launch beta in July and looks to have a global launch August the 3rd. Next up is God of War Ragnarok. This is Jetpack Interactive's PC port. So not much to say about this one. Santa Monica's God of War Ragnarok is getting a PC port, which includes the Valhalla DLC. Now I was a big fan of the first God of War reboot. I think it was a brilliant game, and what I played of Ragnarok was also really enjoyable. I particularly loved their accessibility options, but I didn't really have time to see it through, and whenever I played it on my original PS4 it sounded like a rocket taking off, so I think I'd actually enjoy being able to play this again on my PC. Maybe, if I'm lucky, we can find a mod that increases the time it takes for Mimir to spoil puzzles for me, which is one of my very few gripes with God of War Ragnarok. Anyway, that's launching September 19th, 2024. Next up we have Dynasty Warriors Origins from Omega Force. It's a Dynasty Warriors game for the PS5. Love him or hate him, if you've played one Musou game in the Dynasty Warriors franchise, you should know what to expect here, but with modern graphics. We have a good look at our protagonist and some story details, but outside of that, it doesn't look like it's going to stray too much from the classic formula. So this is a nice to have for die-hard fans of the series, and an expected eventuality besides for everyone else. That's looking to drop in 2025. Okay, Infinity Nikki from Infold. The literal first word in this trailer was Momo, and for anyone who knows me and my Peach Girl curse, that pretty much means this game and I were destined to be together. But it goes further than that. I remember seeing the first trailer they dropped for this a while back and thinking, this is my wildcard pick. I think this could actually be tons of fun. For a little context on what the game is, it's the evolution of a series of mobile story-driven dress-up games by developer Paper Games, featuring the character Nikki. But it looks like a new overseas studio was established under the name Infold, who are making Nikki take the bold leap to console in what looks like an open-world dress-up adventure game. I think the core idea was that different clothes gave you different abilities, so I expected a lot of platforming and exploration, but this trailer also shows us that the game has boss fights, which is surprising to me for some reason. The world is beautiful and I love the music, but this game is really all about the outfits. I'm an environment artist myself, but I've always been really into character and costume design, especially when it comes to realizing that in 3D, and with all those cute clothes and a big emphasis on photo mode, this feels feels like a game that was made for people like me, and I continue to anticipate the launch of the game. A little more baffling is the statement testing Q3 2024, which makes me wonder what that's all about. It doesn't at first seem to have an overt online component, but there may be some stuff under the hood that needs stress testing. Or maybe this is just referring to a demo, I don't know, but anyway. Infinity Nikki, as a guess, I expect it to release probably sometime early 2025, test in Q3 2024, whatever that means. Next, Ballad of Antara, also from Infold and Tipsworks. The first thing I said is, what the heck, that's awesome! Another entry from Infold here. Right off the bat, this looks to be heavily inspired by Elden Ring, and whatever this is appears to have some really impressive visuals. We get to see some fantastic enemy designs and gorgeous landscapes. Gameplay remains to be seen, but it looks like a hack and slash action combat game set in this intriguing world, so something to keep an eye on for more footage in the future. That's set for 2025. So we're in the VR section now. This is Skydance's Behemoth by, you guessed it, Skydance Games. They developed the exceptionally well-received The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners VR game. Behemoth appears to be a VR game with a focus on melee combat and featuring a fun grappling hook mechanic. The best thing I can compare this to in my experience in VR is something like Blade and Sorcery, but the combat here seems more fluid. There appears to be a focus in the trailer of showing off the interesting fancy things you can do with the combat mechanics, and it looks pretty slick with some decent visuals. And at one point our guy throws a sword and slices the dude's head in half, and that's awesome. It looks like this loop is going to be about working through levels filled with combat arenas and then fighting a massive colossus at the end using that grappling hook to gain advantage. There are some frame issues in the trailer that I would hope to get ironed out, but as a fan of this kind of game it's intriguing as another step in the VR hack and slash space. Hopefully this makes it to PC eventually, but for now it's slated for PSVR 2. Secondly, from Survivos and 20th Century Fox, Alien Rogue Incursion. Not much here, just a teaser trailer for what looks like a first-person VR alien survival game, potentially a bit more of a combat focus than something like Alien Isolation, but this is mostly a mood trailer. It's slated for PSVR 2 Holiday 2024. Next, Marvel Rivals from NetEase Games. Forgive me for saying this right off the bat, but I felt like I was watching a YouTube ad and waiting for the skip button while watching this. What I can say is that it certainly displays some really pretty texturing work. The character realization is great, and they really nailed a contemporary comic book style with the whole thing. That's my first impression. It's a competitive arena combat game, but with Marvel characters, each with their own abilities. A lot of classic Marvel characters are present, and they have some flashy special moves on display, as well as what looks like destructible environments that could add some dynamism to the levels. I was pretty fond of how this one building gets destroyed, but then little robots hold the roof up, so you break open the sightline blocker, but you get to keep the verticality. Just a little level design thing I noticed that I thought was pretty neat. This looks like a mobile game, so if it isn't already available on mobile at launch, I would expect it to maybe come later. I don't know, this is merely speculation, but with this being NetEase, I would also anticipate some pretty heavy microtransactions. You have the Marvel license, and it's a hero shooter, so I would absolutely expect there to be either a gacha system or a lot of characters hidden behind paywalls. Again, speculation, but you know. No smoke without fire. They finished off the trailer with Waifu Galactus, who I thought sounded a lot like Diva, and made me accidentally title the section of my notes Marvel Waifus, which I found very amusing. Anyways, if you're into hero shooters and you love Marvel characters enough for that to be a major selling point, it might be worth keeping an eye on. Closed beta is on PS5 in July 2024. Okay, Where Winds Meet by Everstone Studio. This is, I think, the first game from Everstone Studio as far as I can tell. According to their website, Where Winds Meet is a wuxia, if I'm saying that right, open world action adventure RPG set in ancient China's tumultuous 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms era. There's an emphasis in the trailer on spectacular boss fights, and they show us a lot of really interesting fantastical designs. I enjoy seeing elements of Chinese mythological design working their way into the world, and their website has some really beautiful full motion environmental shots that show us some of the game's visual prowess, as well as some more footage of the game's combat systems. Check it out if that's something that interests you. I happen to be quite fond of Chinese high fantasy. I was a huge fan of Ice Fantasy. I watched the entire show, and so I like to see it coming into games a little bit more. I guess maybe I'd check this out. Okay, Ballistic Moon with the Until Dawn remaster. The Supermassive Games branching narrative survival horror adventure Until Dawn is getting a bit of a remaster. It's actually a really fun game, and if you missed it the first time around, this could be a good way to experience the story for yourself, but they also added some new environments, collectibles, and recut narrative sequences, so there's something there for older players too. If this is interesting for you, you can wake up to it dropping on PC and PS5 in around fall 2024, so pretty soon. Okay, now some more footage from Path of Exile 2 from Grinding Gear Games. Path of Exile 2 is the next entry in the PoE franchise from Grinding Gear Games. It's been in development for a long time, and it's looking to be not only a fresh story, but a fresh take on the gameplay too, being a little slower paced and I think a bit more intricate in how you choose to use your abilities and skills. The trailer here shows some really gorgeous shots of the environments, and we get some bits and pieces on the story as well as a look at the console control system. One thing I noticed is the button mapping. I'm not super keen on using the D-pad for abilities when you have to pretty much keep moving all the time in these kind of games, at least in the first PoE you do. Games like Final Fantasy XIV let you use triggers to like load up or activate other sets of abilities by fluidly swapping in different hotbars, and I feel that that control scheme is so good it might as well be the default for console MMOs at this point. That being said, I can see myself leaving passive abilities like wards and things on the D-pad and just having visual on that all the time, so it's not a deal breaker. Then they show us the couch co-op. Now couch co-op for PoE is actually pretty sick. It brought back some PS1 gaming with my friends vibes, and I think this is a really smart way to get people interested in PoE 2 as a console experience for local play, which might appeal to people who are turned off by the idea of an MMO. Additionally, the game supports both cross-play and cross-progression, which is great news for players who want to run seasonal characters without committing to one single platform. That's looking to be in early access late 2024. Silent Hill 2 remake from Bloober Team, a remake that will always be contentious due to its revered position in game history and the team making it. Case in point, we get a look at Angela's design for the game. Now, as you would come to expect, the classic online debate on her character design is of course raging on in the background, but if you want my 2 cents, here it is. She's a lot more human looking now. There's something about her character in the original game that is a little unsettling. She's built from jagged forms, which in design are often used to represent danger or anger, and she speaks and acts in a strange, stilted, dissociative way as though in a dream, which in the original game felt appropriate for the setting. Here she seems a lot more kind of normal. They've used less jagged shapes, I think, to make her seem more human and approachable, and she speaks much more normally. This is probably to set up for later in the story and I guess build a stronger juxtaposition between the character we initially meet and the one we then come to know. I just wanted to share my thoughts on that because all too often this debate seems to always resolve around purely the character's visual appeal and rarely thinks about how it might be a choice that considers the overall direction of the game, taking into account the world, narrative, and overarching themes. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now and talk about the game. Environments are very pretty. Can't fault Bloober on that, never have been able to. Same with the medium, although it did not run particularly well in DX12 mode, which the Game Pass version forced us to use. Hopefully since then the team has a better handle on optimization for that renderer. We also see a bit of combat. Combat was never the best part of SH2. It's modernized for modern enemy movement, but still looks a little bit clunky, which actually I think is a good thing. Too easy and you lose the sense of dread from combat situations, but the feel and frequency of it will determine whether it's a welcome part of the overall experience or nothing more than an annoying roadblock. Sound design is really nice with some notable moments in the trailer. Looking forward to hearing a fresh take on the soundtrack. I'm always down for new takes on older material. I think that's super fun to be able to listen to the old one and then compare it with the new one. Anyways, Silent Hill is set to drop on October 8th, 2024, and there's a Silent Hill transmission event as well immediately after that, which I need to go back and watch now. Moving on from that, we finally get another look at Monster Hunter Wilds from Capcom. So Capcom's latest entry in the Monster Hunter franchise, it's Mon Hun World, but bigger and better. Unlike Monster Hunter Rise, which felt like a much more traditional Monster Hunter game, Monster Hunter Wilds is looking to follow in the footsteps of Monster Hunter World and the Iceborne expansion by building high-fidelity monsters and environments made to run on powerful hardware. As we had in Rise, mounts are back, but this time it's like a chocobo lizard. I believe they called it a secret. There's some cool beasties as you might expect, and a demonstration of combat. Once again, nothing too out of sorts here, but it looks like there's now a sidearm in addition to the main weapon. I couldn't tell if this gun was a different item or the weapon was some kind of transforming gunblade, but I think this is a sidearm that will make for some interesting damage dealing setups. I also did some reading about other new mechanics such as wounding, which allows you to repeatedly hit the same part of a monster in order to create a temporary weak spot. Suffice it to say, I think there's going to be enough mechanical changes to keep things interesting without being too much more overwhelming. Monster Hunter World aimed to bring in a new audience, which it managed spectacularly, but as a fairly complex game, it was quite a lot to take on board for players new to the franchise, which is something to be aware of if this ends up being your first Monster Hunter game, but my hope is that some of the wordier tutorials have maybe been trimmed down a bit for accessibility. Nevertheless, it's still as pretty as ever. I love seeing the thunder weather effects in the sandstorm, and personally I can't wait to get back into Monster Hunter in a big way when this drops sometime in 2025. As a final note on this, if you have World and/or Iceborne save data, you get bonus Palico gear. Prior to the launch of Monster Hunter World, there was also a beta that afforded you additional starter items for beating it, so I look forward to seeing if another network test drops before the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds. Last but not least, Astrobot from PlayStation Studios Asobi. They straight up gave Astrobot a full-ass game. Astro's Playroom was really cool for a little platformer made by Asobi to show off the fancy new controller and the rendering capabilities of the PS5, as well as to celebrate the history of Sony with lots of fun little references and collectibles. I think it's rad that they're making another one. It looks to also be referencing classic games and hardware again, and it looks even more like a fully fledged mascot adventure game, which is really refreshing to see still happening in 2024. I hope they still have a big room where you can look at all the cool stuff you collect throughout the game. Filling in the gaps and seeing the collection grow was a lot of fun for me, but I also really enjoyed finding all the little references being played out by other robots in the game. I think this would be really great for a younger audience and probably the closest thing to a Mario game on the PS5. That's set to drop fairly soon on September 6, 2024. So that's it, that's everything they showed us in the state of play, and here are my personal top picks from what we saw. Number 1, Infinity Nikki. This was my wildcard pick from a few years back and it's so dumb, but I just really like Fashion Souls games where you take photos of stuff and it looks like they've weaponized the fashion in a way I can get behind. It's gorgeous, and as an environment artist with an interesting character art and costume design, color me interested still. Number 2, Path of Exile 2. I wouldn't be playing this on PlayStation, but I have spent rather a long time on PoE in the past, and I've always been interested in their seasonal content and how they keep the game new and interesting, so I'd have to play PoE 2 and see what changes the game brings to the table, as well as a new story and a new playstyle. Number 3, Astrobot. I think it's awesome they gave this guy a shot at another full-fledged title, not even on a console launch, and it just looks like a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Astro's Playroom for what it was, and I can see myself getting into this. With that said, before I reveal my most anticipated game, here are some honourable mentions. Silent Hill 2 Remake, not a launch title for me, but I'm curious to see how it goes with the Silent Hill fanbase. I'm like 70% sure it's going to get absolutely blasted, but I'm still willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But they really are playing with fire on this one, so it remains to be seen. Next, God of War on PC is nice to have, and I never finished it, so I'll probably pick this up eventually when I feel like playing it again. And finally, Concord, because I think it's a neat idea to unveil the story weekly, and I kind of want them to succeed just so we have something else to take over where Overwatch 2 left off. If nothing else, I'll be watching the cutscenes online to see if anything interesting comes from some of the other characters. And finally, for my most anticipated game, if you hadn't already guessed it, Monster Hunter Wilds. I love Monster Hunter World, I played the heck out of it in Iceborne, but I didn't find myself fully grabbed by Rise. I feel like Wilds is the game I've been waiting for, and I'm very excited for it. So that about does it from the summer 2024 state of play. I've never really done a video like this before, so if you got this far, then thank you for watching, and I hope you got something out of it. If you have anything you want to say, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll do my best to read them. Otherwise, let me know you liked it by, maybe giving it a like or poking that little subscribe button over there, and I'll hopefully be back again with a roundup of some of the other shows in Summer Game Fest. Although I can't make any promises, as I am presently moving countries, so things are a little wishy-washy for me right now. If you want more content from me in the meantime, I have a Twitch channel where I mostly play games, and pretty much all of my VODs get backed up on my other channel on YouTube. Both are linked in the description. Anyways, that's the video. Thanks for watching. See ya!